Welcome back, Multi-Battle Conference. We have another interview here today with one of our newer teams, the Platinum Pixies. Two of our SoCal locals. We have Steel Trainer Ty and Nick, otherwise known as Krabby Snail, on Discord. Go ahead and say hi, guys.
Hey,
Hey,
All right, so we're going to be talking about their team today. Their first pick they went with was one of the probably the coolest mythical Pokemon, Genesect, followed up by a Milotic. They got the ever-present Landorus Therian form. Klefki after that. Crobat for their fifth pick. Moving on to the second half of the draft, they picked up Ditto, followed by Cradilly, Galarian Slowbro, Beware, and they finished off their draft with the Pyukumuku. So go ahead and tell us about your team, guys. How did the draft go for you? What do you like about your team? What are the most important things about it? What do you got?
go ahead.
initially we wanted our first pick to be Tapu Fini, but it did get sniped. I'm not bitter. So
They
we
can't do that.
we did. I have our own Genesect already, so we just went ahead and picked it first instead. So if you want to, you can continue from there, Todd.
Sure. We yeah, we went for kind of a switch moves heavy top half draft and kind of went for more supportive mons and Klefki and Crobat after that, and finished off with some potential counters to the top half of the draft for to plug up holes that we thought might be a little bit weak. So Slowbro and Beware and Cordeli help out with that. And Ditto and Pyukumuku for the me because definitely the strongest two in the entire conference for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious to see how you use that Ditto because I know you guys really wanted that thing. So, yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit as we move along here. So, we're gonna go ahead and get into the grading portion. We're gonna talk about the grades that we gave you guys. Starting off with your drafting grade, we gave you a C plus on this one. We do like we do like that you grabbed the Genesect and Landorus pretty early on. They don't. I wouldn't say they have amazing synergy with each other, but they are definitely big offensive threats that can work well together, especially if they're in Tailwind or Landorus is speed boosting with Airstream or something. So I like that you got those near the top. We were a little bit skeptical about the Milotic so early. It does do some good stuff here, which we'll get more into when Anthony talks about synergy in a moment. But it's I it seems like the kind of Pokemon that's not necessarily going to go this early. I think if it was in B tier instead, it would clearly have more value, and I think you can make a better case for it getting picked up early, at least early for its tier. So it seemed a little odd to pick it up that early. I don't know if that was necessary. You probably could have waited, and I suspect it still would have been there a little bit later on. I do actually like the Klefki and the Crobat after your big offensive pair because that was kind of around the time that a lot of people were looking at Tailwind users. Snatching one up in the first half of the draft was definitely smart, and Crobat is definitely a really reliable Tailwind user. It's we actually just we were talking to the Reggie Geezers, and they also have an inner focus Tailwind user in Suicune, but Crobat's is quite a bit more reliable and a lot stronger in Generation 8 with the new dynamic speed mechanics because of that massive speed stat. So I think yeah, I mean inner focus and such a high base speed stat makes Crobat an incredibly reliable Tailwind setter. So I think it was good that you picked that up. Prankster Pokemon, I think, were those were something that I actually sort of expected to go quicker than they did, but there's actually quite a few still left on the board, which is kind of surprising to me actually. So, but in any case, I think that was still a good decision. I might have gone Crobat before Klefki, but I don't think it's a huge deal. After that, I think we both kind of agree that you guys picked Ditto a little bit early. We'll get your thoughts on that in a little bit, because I know that that was something you guys had decided on really early on. The Cradily, I can see it working well with some of this other stuff you picked already, but I think it seemed to us like it was probably a little bit more important to go with the Slowbro and Beware coming off of your B tier picks for Klefki and Crobat. I think they were probably a little bit more important to get earlier than Ditto and Cradily. Mostly because that was kind of around the time people seemed to be putting together Trick Room modes, and a lot of the Trick Room setters, and especially the Trick Room sweepers, were going pretty fast. And both Beware and Slowbro, I think, are very high value for the tier that they're in. The C tier is a little bit weird because you have to sift through a lot of trash mons to find the good ones, and I do actually commend you for finding a couple of the good ones. I think Beware and Galarian Slowbro are some of the better ones you can get out of that tier, and I think for that reason, it probably would have been a better idea to pick them sooner. I'm actually surprised that they were both still available that late in the draft. So that was those were kind of our thoughts on your drafting ability. Moving on to Synergy.
For Synergy, we ended up giving you a B minus. You guys have, when we were talking about this draft, Matt and I, you guys have a lot of almost cores. You have no actual type cores. You have no Fire, Water, Grass. You have no Fairy, Steel, Dragon. You have no Fighting, Dark, Psychic. But you almost have those. You have a Psychic Fighting type, but no Dark. You have a Grass Water type, but no Fire. You have a Steel Fairy type, but no Dragon. So all this stuff is almost there, and so we obviously are going to hit you a little bit on it, but it's not a huge deal breaker, because a lot of the stuff that you have still does synergize a little bit pretty well. As you guys were talking about, the Milotic and the Landorus do kind of work well with each other, because defensively the Milotic can very easily take hits for Landorus, and then the other way around, Landorus could very easily take electric attacks for Milotic. It's obviously immune, so that obviously works out. Klefki has the ability to put up Rain Dance to protect the Genesect from fire type attacks. You have good speed control for your offensive threats, so like that also counts a lot to your synergy grade, because you're supporting them in the proper ways. You also supported one of your heavier hitters, the Beware, in the proper way. You were able to get a Slowbro next to it, and having the Fighting type to kind of counter for that Dark typing that Slowbro is also weak to, because it's of its new, or not new, but it's Psychic typing. That also is a big help. So like I said, you have a lot of Pokemon that synergize with each other, like almost there, 60%. You're just almost missing that one piece that could really round out the entire team. Not necessarily saying that that your pairings are not proper or anything like that. It's just that you're missing a couple tiny pieces that could really turn your synergy grade and put it up and over the top.
Yeah, I think with a few transactions, maybe you could probably go from the B minus here to maybe a B plus, or even an A minus if you make the right transactions. But I mean, I think I like how the Milotic works with the Landorus and the Genesect. I like how the Tailwind Crobat and the Screens Klefki actually support your big S tier heavy hitters. There's a reason that this is the highest grade that we gave you. There's some good synergy here for sure. It's like Anthony said, it's just almost there in a couple of different spots. Moving on to threat level, we dropped you guys down to a C for threat level, largely because we felt like threat level is not 100% about offense, but that is a very big component to it, and we felt like the draft was kind of lacking in offense aside from those two big S tiers. Now, if your offense is going to come from anywhere, it should probably be from your S tiers. But at the same time, those are only 2 Pokemon out of your entire 10 Pokemon draft. So if you take away the Genesect and Landorus, there's not a huge amount of stuff here that's all that threatening. Milotic can be sort of threatening. We actually saw last season that the Sky Pillars, now the mediocre Mudkips, used Milotic really well with usually with a Coil Hypnosis set, and if you let that thing get set up, it can be very very threatening. The thing is, you have to set it up to get those hypnosises off reliably. Klefki can be a decent threat, but it's a pretty straightforward Pokemon. It's if you have a way to handle those prankster Thunder Waves and maybe you bring a Brick Break to the battle, it's it can sort of be easy to deal with. Crobat can be it can be a little bit offensive, but it's mostly I feel like it's mostly there as a Tailwind bot, but it does have some other decent tools it can make use of. I just wouldn't think of it as a threatening Pokemon exactly. Ditto is also kind of a gamble. It's a little bit weird, but and then down at the bottom, you do seem to have kind of a Trick Room mode, but I'm concerned that it's maybe not quite slow enough. I do like that the Slowbro does hit base 30. That's kind of the baseline for a lot of the offensive Trick Room Pokemon we look for, even though other Pokemon, even if they're faster, they can still work okay in Trick Room. But I am sort of concerned that this Trick Room mode might not be slow and offensive enough, especially considering a couple of the other Trick Room modes that we've seen get drafted here. So that's why we gave you a C for your threat level.
Moving on to versatility, we gave you a C for that as well. Your two top Pokemon, and when I say your two top, I mean Genesect and Landorus Therian. Milotic to a certain extent as well, but mainly those two. Those have a lot of versatility. Genesect has an incredible move pool. It has a lot of different things that it can do, especially if you have like certain event moves like Shift Gear and Extreme Speed. It can do a lot of things, and Landorus as well. Landorus has a lot of different things that it can do. But one of the issues is that you can't really change those roles up very much because all the offense is coming out of those two Pokemon, and it really, really hurts you to shift. So if you were to take Landorus and make it into more of a pivoting type, Pokemon where it's a little bit bulkier, and can do other things besides just throwing off, Choice Scarf, Earthquakes, or however you want to do it, then that means that Genesect is essentially going to be the primary Pokemon that you're going to have. And if that thing goes down, it's going to be an uphill battle for you guys there. So while those Pokemon are still very versatile, and I wouldn't say that they're not, because they're your only forms of offense, it kind of pigeonholes you to bring them as offensive threats every single game. Milotic can obviously do a couple of things too. We were talking about the competitive or the Marvel scale set with the Sky Pillars there, and they use Coil Hypnosis recover, and I believe it was Muddy Water or Scald. I think it was Scald most
Usually
of the time.
they had Scald.
Yeah. And just that set was able to be so oppressive and do so much damage, not even just through HP or damage levels, just by putting stuff to sleep and allowing the other things next to it to just sweep through. So that definitely is a little bit more threatening, and can also run like more competitive and try and deter intimidates and boosts like that. But it's still not going to do too much more. Klefki and Crobat, while they have a deep move pool and they can do a decent amount of things, they're kind of still pigeonholed to be supportive Pokemon. Ditto is Ditto. It's going to switch in, transform to something else. Cradily is not really changing up its role at any point. Slowbro's not really changing up its role. Beware's not trying to do anything crazy like run a Choice Scarf or anything like that. Pyukumuku is more or less just going to be stalling stuff out. So there's not a lot of role switching that's on this team. What these Pokemon are good at, and you know what they're going to do when you see them in team preview. That doesn't make them any less dangerous. It just makes them much more predictable. And that's one of the things that we look at in versatility. Like I said, though, it doesn't mean that you don't have anything. I think your top three, particularly the Genesect and the Landorus Therian, do have a fair bit amount of flexibility in their role. But I think just because of the way that the team is constructed, they're going to be forced to be offensive on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah. So overall, those grades resulted in a C+. Moving on to the pros and cons. For the pros, you guys have definitely have strong and reliable speed control, especially with that Crobat. That's mostly about the Crobat, but the the Landorus is part of that as well as is the Klefki. The Klefki's speed control is maybe a little bit unreliable because it can still get faked out and you can miss Thunder Wave potentially. Landorus, if you're gonna Dynamax it, you've got really strong max airstreams coming out that can work really well next to Genesect. The Crobat, obviously, super fast inner focus Tailwind, very reliable Tailwind setter. So that's definitely one of your pros. Like I mentioned with your Slowbro and the Beware, you guys managed to get very high value C tier picks. And again, I'm pretty surprised that both of them were left down at the 8th and ninth round, because I think there's a lot of people were picking stuff from C tier, and there's not always great stuff to pick from. But you guys managed to find a couple of gems given what they cost. You also have a very, very strong offensive fast mode. You have two very good S tiers. They're both some of these legendary Pokemon that have 600 base stat totals. Some S tier Pokemon are a little bit more. Their tier comes more from their combination of moves or like a really good ability they have or something. You guys just pick two that are just straight up good all around, and I think they're gonna do well together, especially with the kind of support and speed control you have. And like I mentioned, these offensive threats are very well supported. When you have Pokemon like Genesect and Landorus that just have all around good stats, they're gonna benefit from both screens and Tailwind really well because they're big offensive threats with that maybe aren't super fast themselves, but in Tailwind they function very, very well. Both their speed stats are in the 90s, and they both have at least pretty decent natural bulk that can really, really benefit from screens as well. And even, like we mentioned, even Klefki can set up a Rain Dance if you're afraid of a fire move coming out and blowing up the Genesect. Moving on to the cons.
For cons, we looked at your Trick Room mode. We think that it may be, it may be serviceable, but I wonder if it may be a little bit lacking if you haven't already taken an early lead. It's one of the things that a Trick Room mode can honestly bring you back from the brink because it shifts the momentum so heavily, and if you can properly take advantage of that, you can really make a comeback and bring the momentum back into your favor and kind of start chipping away at them and start taking down their bigger threats. So your threats in the back can kind of come in unopposed. That can be a little tough to do with this type of mode here. Not impossible, but this is a type of Trick Room mode that seems good when you've taken a 2-0 or you're 6-4, up by 2. You come in, you switch to Trick Room, you take out the last 2 of their Pokemon, and then you kind of clean it up. So it may be one of those things that you kind of have to have a lot of support for and prep for in order to get it to function properly. Otherwise, it's going to be extremely underwhelming. Just because you don't really see tons of offense or anything like that coming out of these 2 slots, is particularly because Beware, while it may have offense, its speed stat really just isn't slow enough, and then Slowbro's the opposite. While its speed stat might be slow enough, its stats and its coverage just isn't enough to really. It
does have decent coverage actually, but I think a lot of people overestimate what 100 base attack or special attack can actually do.
Yeah, somebody who used Zygarde, which has 100 base attack, can tell you it's not a lot. It's not a lot.
Yeah.
So that was one of the cons, that the Trick Room mode might not be offensive enough. Obviously, we hit on it with the synergy grade, but you're lacking any type of type core, whether that be the traditional fire, water, grass, or the also popular fairy, steel, dragon.
At least the type cores that the main 3 that we're talking about.
The main 3, and you're really lacking any of those. They're almost there, but we have to ding you because you didn't hit any of them. The other one is both your S tiers have ×4 weaknesses. This is actually probably the biggest one in my opinion. We just got off an interview with Dave from the Reggie Geezers, and he was telling us how 2 seasons ago they had drafted Charizard, and that it was so tough to use it because he was pigeonholed into using Charty Berry every single week, because that's what people brought. They brought some type of rock type coverage to knock it out, and I'm afraid that you guys are going to be put in that position constantly, to where you're going to have to constantly have an Aqua Berry on the Genesect and a Yachi Berry on the Landorus, because so many things, especially ice coverage, like so many water types just get ice coverage, to where instead of hitting you 2 times effectively, it can be 4 times super effectively. And the Genesect, it's the same deal. There's a ridiculous amount of things that get Flamethrower that probably shouldn't, but it does.
And heat wave. Flying types love to run heat wave.
And flying types, for whatever reason, love running heat wave. So it's just like, don't ask why Togekiss gets heat wave, but whatever. That's not the point. So it may be a little bit of an issue for you guys when you guys are in a draft format where people are prepping week to week, and they know that your top 2 threats have a ×4 weakness. You may find yourself some issues, especially because we don't even have this on there, but it's something that we hit a lot of teams on. You have no redirection on this team.
Yeah.
And that's going to make it even harder for protecting your S tiers from these super strong ×4 attacks, because we have the Matt Alcinas. They had Kartana, but they also have one of the best redirectors in the game with Indeedee. And one of the things that they were talking about is Heat Wave's a lot harder to come by than random ground type coverage, because they had Magnezone before. And in this situation, they don't even need to run Heat Wave. They can just run Flamethrower and have a reliable way to take you down. And that has a lot more access, a lot better access to other Pokemon than something like Heat Wave does. So you may find yourself in a little bit of a problem there. And then the last point is something that we've hit on a lot already, is most of the draft's offense is concentrated in your 2 S tiers. Not much to say on it. It's just that is what it is. It's the Genesect and the Landorus are going to be the ones that are really going to be knocking stuff out. And I'll tell you this right now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing that you have limited Dynamax options, because they're both very good Dynamax options. And I feel that sometimes having too many Dynamax options can be a hindrance. So sometimes keeping it down to 2 or 3 is actually a benefit, because it helps you streamline your team building process a lot more. And it can be helpful, especially when you have 2 Pokemon that are as versatile as Genesect and Landorus Therian. But the main point I'm trying to say is that you still only have those 2 Pokemon at the end of the day, and they have some glaring weaknesses, especially considering how much access random fire and random ice types can go to just these Pokemon that you wouldn't even expect have them. But they're going to carry it this time because they're going against Genesect and Landorus Therian.
Yeah.
So those were some of the main points that we hit on with this draft.
Let's talk about the lack of offense first. Like what are at least lack of offense aside from the Genesect and Landorus? What are your guys' thoughts on that? Are you do you see more offensive capabilities where we don't, or do you feel like the Landorus and the Genesect are enough? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that there's a lot more potential in Milotic than you're giving it credit for in that circumstance. I think it's super easy to set Milotic up, especially with competitive, because there's a lot of things on this team that can proc a stat drop on Milotic from our side, like Defog on Crobat, for example, which then allows us to get 100% accuracy Hydro Pumps or close to it on top of the +2 boost. So I think that
competitive actually doesn't activate when the stat drop is coming from your ally.
Does it not?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, little doubles thing.
Oh,
yeah.
shit.
Defiant works the same way.
Yeah, Defiant the same way. I think the only thing that works like that is Contrary.
Yeah, you can do contraries. It works just fine with that, but
But
Yeah.
I think you're right in the same
Alright.
sense that Milotic still has the ability to set up a lot easier than we thought, because the Sky Pillars were able to use it to great extent just by getting one coil up.
Yeah.
That was all they needed a lot of times, and you have that with Marvel Scale. You have the Flame Orb. It just take literally a coil. The turn passes, and now your defenses are just through the roof.
And you can still do that with competitive too. It's just that they usually like to go Marvel scale more because I guess the majority of teams that they were going up against didn't have Intimidate.
Yeah.
But when they were going up against Intimidate, they
competitive.
did run competitive too. So
Yeah. I mean, Marvel Scale is just generally better with Coil anyway,
Yes.
just because the two of them work together really well.
yeah, they stack pretty nicely.
Yeah.
So where else? My load it can definitely go offensive, even if you're not able to boost it yourself. It can actually be a decent Dynamax option. I mean, it gets Mud Shot, so you can actually use Max Quake with it, which can be good against a lot of different things. I've gone up against Max Quake Milotic in draft once or twice, and it's a little scary. So where else do you think your offense is coming from?
We have the Beware has offensive presence the most out of like the bottom tiers. But then we did have that Credilli. I feel like its stats aren't great, but its typing has really good synergy with like what our powerful Pokemon are weak against. Where Genesect is quad weak against fire, I in addition to having like a water and a ground type, I was pushing. I was like, we should have like a rock type as well. Then Credilli is cool because it's like grass rock typing.
Yeah.
Like it can counter like the ice that Landorus is weak to, or like the water types that are using the ice moves on Landorus. And if we thought they were going to use like a water move, since we don't have redirection, the only mode of redirection that there is if the Credilli's Storm Drain is triggered.
Yeah.
But then we also have the Ditto. So if like we swapped in a Ditto and like it had the right held item, like it could be the offensive presence.
For sure, yeah.
Or if it copied the right Pokemon.
Yeah,
You also mentioned Choice Scarf Beware earlier, and it does technically, with Tailwind, outspeed a lot of shit. One
Oh, it
turn
can, yeah.
It's like 720 speed. It goes fast.
Or we could even max strike. Like it's a strong normal. Like
True.
Yeah, that's true. I mostly Beware just seems a little bit weird to me because obviously it does have a more than usable attack stat. 125 is nothing to sneeze at. It's more just a little bit awkward because of the speed stat. I feel like anything in like the 50s or 60s is very awkward. Even the 70s and the 40s can get a little bit weird, but 50s and 60s especially are a little bit hard to use. It's a little bit hard to figure out how to go first, whether you're in Trick Room or Tailwind or.
It does get Hammer Arm though, which helps it.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, yeah.
Stab Hammer Arm lowers its speed of stage. Kind of get rolling a little bit on that.
You guys also mentioned before we started recording that you Cradily does get Meteor Beam, which could help bolster its sort of mediocre special attack stat. I'm not sure if it'll be enough, but it could be depending on what kind of calcs you can hit with that. It is decently slower than Beware, so that's nice. The Ditto, I know you guys like the Ditto a lot. I'm more skeptical about it. I think this is one of those Pokemon that where we're kind of thinking we want you guys to prove us wrong. We're a little bit skeptical about it because it's a bit of a gamble to use, especially in multi-battles, because you don't know. It's kind of a 50-50 shot which of your opponent's Pokemon are going to show up on which side. So there's only going to be a set group of 3 Pokemon coming out of your opponent's side that Ditto is actually going to be able to transform into. So at least with Imposter, if Ditto is sitting there and the side across from it actually is already gone, it can still manually transform into the other one. But usually Imposter is what makes Ditto actually usable, right?
Yeah.
So Yeah, it's a little bit weird, and even in other draft leagues, like in VGC draft leagues, I've seen people use it, and it's difficult to use. It's difficult to end up transforming into the right stuff. I hope you guys can use it well. This is definitely one of those prove me wrong kind of mons.
Also, Ty mentioned something about a big U-turn core that you kind of had here, right? That can kind of help a lot with the synergy of some of these. Can you explain that?
Yeah. Real fast, the one little last note on Ditto there.
Sure, yeah.
I think Ditto's value comes more from the information you glean from the enemy team's moveset, and potentially, like, you can see stats even if you look at the summary screen, right?
I
You
don't
can,
know
see how
actually.
they- You can like look into the Ditto summary and see how they've EV trained.
I
And you
don't
can
know.
run
We used
calcs during the
Transform
game.
Mew once, but we didn't check the stats. That's
Yeah.
actually that we would like. We would probably like to know that because Transform is something that we've used before on Mew. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the other reasons we wanted to pick up Ditto, just because of how much information you can get off of your opponent's sets.
Yeah, that's
So you know
fair.
what you're looking at.
yeah, definitely fair.
Yeah.
In terms of the U-turn core, so you're mainly looking at the top 5 minus Klefki. But even if there's a Pokemon, like, we can check before a battle whether a Pokemon has fire or ice moves, right? And even if they're bringing fire and ice moves to cover Genesect and Landorus, they're still wasting their 4 moves on covering those things when they can when both of them can just as easily switch away from them and deal damage at the same time, and pivots. But since my Lodic covers the water, has a fire resistance with the water type, Landorus covers my Lodic's electric weakness, and Crobat covers its grass weakness. And then Landorus's ice weakness gets also covered back in by my Lodic, and Landorus's water weakness goes into Credilli. I think there's just a lot of, like, even if they bring those things to counter the 4X weaknesses, it's going to be really hard to keep Genesect and Landorus on the field to be able to take advantage of it.
Thank you.
For sure,
explaining
yeah.
that. Yeah, because that is something that's actually really worth noting.
Which is why your synergy grade was the highest one we gave
Yeah.
you, frankly. So
Because they do work well, as you just explained together. And real quick, we just wanted to ask, the B and C tier Pokemon, you guys were able to find some pretty good ones, specifically in C tier. But this lower half of the draft, we just wanted to know what your thought process was 6 through 9. Those picks being Ditto, Cradilly, Slowbro, Galarian, and Beware.
well, even 4 through 9. I mean, I'd like to hear a little bit about the Klefki and the Crobat as well. I mean,
But we more or less thought no, I'm saying just the particular order that they chose the Pokemon.
that too, yeah.
But yes, definitely the Klefki Crobat. We do want to hear your thoughts on that. But specifically, the Beware and the Slowbro. Why were those chosen so late compared to something like Ditto and Cradilly?
Well, for sure the Ditto and Credillies were like my suggestions, and then the Slowbro and Beware were his afterwards. It was like weird. We kind of like went back and forth on like who decided, but ultimately like we both like always agreed on like which one we were gonna pick next. But I was like pushing for Ditto hard from like the very beginning because I saw how low it was, and I'm like, it's such a good Pokemon to only be worth 20 points. Like we should just like draft that for sure once we like start getting down that low.
We were also probably going to draft Ditto a little bit later, but we were going to go Klefki, Crobat, and then Obstagoon, but it got sniped before we got there. And so we picked Ditto because we knew we were going to get it while we were looking through the 30s for something that we thought would be suitable. So Credilly was kind of picked after Ditto because we got Obstagoon sniped from us. We wanted to have that dark type originally.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, yeah, I mean the
kind of retooled the team past that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, because my main criticism there was that I thought the Trick Room mode was more important and more likely to get picked up by other teams, but at the same time, you guys drafted what you wanted, and you still it still worked out. You still ended up getting those in round 8 and 9, so worked out in the end.
Yeah, definitely. and the Klefki and the Crobat. You guys picked those pretty high. What was your guys' thought process on those?
Very basically just like Klefki is defensive support and Crobat is offensive support.
That makes a lot of sense.
But
Honestly, we like them for your
yeah.
guys' S tiers a lot. Anything else you had, Matt?
No, I think just the final few questions.
Yeah. All right. So we're just gonna go ahead and ask you guys a couple of questions that we've been asking all the teams. If we can have both you guys answer, we'll have Nick answer first, then Ty. First, Pokemon that you drafted that you're excited to use.
I'm really excited for Klefki because it's the only fairy type that we got. Because there were multiple fairy ones that I wanted that got sniped that we didn't get. So he actually suggested Klefki, and that's why we kind of picked it early. And I was like, I'm glad we did because we like wouldn't have gotten a fairy otherwise. And then I was super excited for Ditto, just because I love Ditto. My policy before I used fairy types was normal, so I used to like be into normal types. Then I'm really excited for the Credilli too, just because I've like ever since I heard I got Meteor Beam, I love like the scene like rock covers like almost all of grass's weaknesses like perfectly.
Yeah, Credilli has like a really weird type. It's hard to remember what it's weak to sometimes.
Yeah, rock is like not. It's so odd.
So what do you think, Ty? Pokemon you're excited to use?
I mean, I'm very excited for Genesect, of course. I used it a lot back before it got banned on singles. And it's always just been really like slippery. It hits hard. Stab U-turn hurts like a truck even when you don't want it to. You can
Oh my
always
god,
run the surprise Techno Beam.
I actually forgot about this. Remember, we picked Genesect and probably like around the 5th pick, I was talking about because we were like we're trying to deal with like type coverage and stuff, and I'm like, well, Genesect can just use whatever type it needs. And he's like, what do you mean? And I was like, I thought there was a drive for every type in the game, not just like 4 or whatever. So we picked it, not knowing that, and I was like, wow, Team Plasma was slacking.
Well, I mean that's all right.
I mean,
You still get good coverage and
Yeah.
and a lot of base power with the 4 drives that it has, and if you use the Douse drive, it gives it some water coverage with which otherwise it just doesn't have at all. So I think those are still legitimate options.
Yeah.
But-
it hits like 13 out of 18 types with a usable attack, even without Technoblast.
Yeah, it has a lot of really good coverage, and mythicals are, at least this season, mythicals are something that we really like too. We're really excited to use the ones that we have, but that I totally get being excited to use mythicals since we can't in VGC like ever. So
Yeah.
definitely agree with that.
And then real quick, potential underrated Pokemon. Obviously, we've talked a lot about some of the stuff that we don't particularly like, but what is something where you're like, watch, that's gonna show them up.
You never expect the max HP minimum defenses Pyukumuku to switch into the Grassy Glide on the Rillaboom until it one-shots you with Innards Out.
Okay, this is a little
Can't wait to see
unconventional,
that.
but there are 2 Rillaboom teams, so we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Works on Coco too. Nobody picked it up though.
What about you, Nick?
Yeah, obviously the Pikachu's out there crazy, but yeah, it's like it and Ditto are definitely like the weird picks. It's like it's like when they work, they're gonna work, and if they don't, it's like not,
Yeah.
like it'll be like bad.
Also,
But,
shout out
I
to
think-
Slowbro.
Yeah, the Slowbro is very interesting. I'm excited to like be like using it for sure.
All right, and one last one. What are your guys' expectations this season? What's the goal?
I think this is just going to be a lot of fun, really. It's like our first time, and we're like coming in like season 5. It's like if this was like a TV show, like this, when by the time you get to like seasons 4 and 5 and 6, it's like the new characters are always like really cool.
I like that.
Yeah. Well,
All I want to do, I don't care about my record this season. All I want to do is have fun, and do some dumb shit that's gonna make people talk about it in the Discord and say, "What the? Why did they draft there, dude? Like, what was that? What was that weird combo? Like, who? You know,
There's always a little bit of
run-
that.
Yeah,
So
yeah, definitely.
who knew Genesect got gunk shot? What the?
Well, we personally are thrilled to have you guys in this league. We love you too. We think you guys go to locals, and you guys are just fantastic. So we are super happy that you guys are in the league. We hope you guys are able to do well, and show everybody what you guys can do with this team. But yeah, we're excited to have you guys for sure.
any final thoughts from either of you guys before we sign off?
Watch your back.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're coming for you.
All right, that's what we like to hear. That's what we like to hear. All right, guys. Well, thanks again for coming on with us. We appreciate it, man.
For sure, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, good luck this season.